Hey man, how's it going?
Howdy doody.
Howdy doody, howdy doody. How are you doing today, Mitchell?
Not too bad. I cooked some old meat, so we'll see how that goes.
I don't think I want to hear about that, but you know who I do want to hear from? Our special guest star. That's a horrible segue, but our special guest star today, Tristan. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, doing well. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, so before we begin, of course you also know Andrew, who was our previous guest star, somewhat some episodes before. But I asked him a similar question. I'll ask you. It's like, so what do you like about Futurama? What's like do you remember like your first episode? Do you remember any of them that were like kind of like your standouts? Is there a reason that you like it any more than other shows?
I think it just hit me at the right period of my life. We all, grew up with Simpsons, and that was probably the right period of life as well. We were, kids, and it was, at least in part directed towards kids.
With the Bart and Lisa, yeah.
Yeah, with of course adult sensibilities thrown in there as well. And
Yeah, the
then
adult jokes, sure.
yeah, and as we came of age, as we were teenagers, becoming young adults in the world.
Yeah.
Here comes Futurama, which is basically starring a bunch of young adults trying to find their place in the world.
That's right. And all obviously like set in like the future. So like audience members won't know this about you per se unless you have some kind of viewership on another channel. But like
Oh,
you're a
Tristan's so
big
popular. You don't
right,
know?
yeah, super popular online, aren't you, Tristan? But Tristan, you're a computer scientist. Right. You've
Yes,
done
yes.
IT work and you've done app development, you've done a lot of these things. So like science and computer information is very important to you or very good for you.
Yeah.
Is the sci-fi aspect of Futurama a big thing for you, or is it more about like the comedy, would you say?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely a part of it. Like you can have bad sci-fi, obviously, and this is
For sure.
obviously it's a good show first and foremost,
Mhm.
and then it's got the sci-fi, which is really, of course, appeals to that scientific, computer-loving part of my brain.
Sure.
I like to think of it as
Uh,
like fantasy sci-fi because like some of the stuff is like stupid,
Yeah.
I can't even come up with anything. But like when they use animals as
A
science stuff,
Zuzu.
yeah, Zuzu, yeah,
yeah.
kind of thing. Like
Zuzu the
just
gargoyle. Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
Flintstones, like using like the dinosaurs as household tools and stuff like that. But it's the future.
Mhm.
It's like why would we do that when this thing does exactly the same thing and for free
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something like that?
Well,
Having said that, there's some aspects that came kind of true, 20 odd years later.
The iPhone, for
yes.
instance.
Well, there's a couple of things like so Mitchell and I pointed this out in previous episodes of the show. It has this beautiful nostalgic feel of using very old technology in the future. Like they
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
like floppy disks and like rotary phones and all this kind of stuff and like phone booths and all this kind of technology that we
VHS
we don't
tapes.
VHS tapes we don't use anymore. So it has like this kind of retro aspect thing that I kind
Yeah.
of think makes it
Mhm.
where it's set definitely in time when it was made, but it's still kind
Yeah.
of like everlasting. So it's a
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very well made show, well put. But yeah, I guess we'll get right into it. So welcome everyone to the Bite My Shiny Metal cast, episode 8, season 2, as we know it to be, episode 18. Problem with Popplers. So yeah, here we go. We begin here. We get a cold open for the first time in a little while. We get this um, I guess a little commercial. Futurama is brought to you by molten boron. I'm not 100% sure what this is supposed to be. There is a reference to other metals later in
Oh.
the episode. I wonder if that's something to do with it, but
I just like the little divvy that they have. Like nobody doesn't like molten boron.
molten boron. And it's like
I'm
this,
like,
yeah,
yeah, it's a
the beautiful
it's a
woman.
housewife with like
Yeah,
super like oven mitts on and like a goggles, and it's just a barrel full of
molten
lava.
boron.
What I watched the episode a couple times in prep for this, and I
Yeah,
think there's a theme here. I think a lot of their humor, at least for this era, was just absurdism, right? Like
I
just
loved it.
yeah.
like craziness for the sake of craziness. And I'll point out a couple examples as we go through, but I
Yes,
think
please.
Please
right
do.
off the bat, this is molten boron.
Yeah,
Who doesn't
this is
want
the
molten boron?
absurdity. Yep, no, for sure.
I don't love
Um,
molten boron. It hurts.
so we get on from the cold open there from molten boron and the little caption at the bottom there for external use only.
I would
That's
think
a
so.
fun little thing. Yeah, hopefully not for internal use, for external for everybody. And
more absurdism.
Exactly. And we open up with the Planet Express crew, like the trio, the original trio, obviously, Fry, Bender, and Leela. And they're leaving the planet of the Moochers, and they're talking about a fun time, or not a fun time, not so fun time, about how the Moochers basically robbed them and took Fry's pants, which he's clearly not wearing any pants. Nice fun visual gag, but also took all their food. So they are desperately in space somewhere looking for a place to go get something to eat. I guess they discover a planet quite close by. We find out later what this planet's supposed to be, but as we go there and they land on it, there's a mention of something. I was talking to you guys a little bit off mic beforehand about Leela makes mention of something called the Howard Johnsons. This is indeed I guess a former franchise from like doing a quick Google research thing on this. It's like was one of the first franchises in New York and no longer a thing. So I guess it wasn't as popular, hence why it's gone. But there is also mention of other fake fast food places in this universe, right? Which we come to meet, like Fishy Joe's is mentioned.
The walrus.
Nice. Ride the Walrus. Exactly. That comes a bit later. But what was the other? Do you guys remember the other fast food joints that Fry mentions there? There was a burger joint or something, or burger something.
It was just some absurd ones, but the fact that they named a couple of them that were true, like we're from Canada, so like there's obviously like hundreds of different franchises that we don't get up here for fast foods and stuff.
Yeah.
Even like city specific stuff, people get different things. So maybe those were true. Maybe some of those were actually like the favorite places that the writers had growing up or something like that. Well, I don't know.
I don't remember. They were all fake.
Yeah, I assume they were fake as well, but for sure. But in any case, they land on this planet and not a lot of food, but they do find some kind of strange, I guess from first glance, they look like shrimp. Bender also calls them prongs, which of course is another name
I love this part because it's just a Benderism, because like Fry's like, hey look, a ditch full of shrimp. He's like, no, it looks more like a hole full of prawns. It's like ditch, hole, shrimp, prawn.
Yeah.
I just want to point out when they first land, Leela consults her smart wrist device. Then it classifies it as a type M planet or something like that.
I was going to mention that. Yeah, is an M planet. What the hell's that?
I mean, of course, the particular wrist device she has in classifying the planets, we don't have that yet. But the fact that so many of us actually have smartwatches, which weren't a thing at this time, was one of the examples of the sci-fi that sort of came true.
Yes, and she doesn't really have a word or a name for her wrist thing. She just says, let's do dad on my wrist. It just does this. Like it's just like some random item that she just commonly has, but she never really makes mention of. Yeah, that's true.
We do see that it's actually a mini robot though next episode.
Yes, and we also learn that it has like so many other functions. Like it tells time, it does all these functions.
Just on the recent one with Hermes gets his requisition back. It has like a cold, finder thing. Like cold, hot. It's just
hot. Right. Yeah.
The future, like it's one of those plot devices. Just like this is just a fun joke. Let's use this thing again because she brings it up. It gets brought up multiple times.
It's always a thing. And it does talk to her. You're right. Next episode, something like that, right? So, and it also proves here that Bender, although he loves to be a chef, which Mitchell and I did the episode previously, when he wants to be a chef, but he clearly doesn't know what people eat, and so he's like talking about rocks and mud and all this kind of stuff. So there's some nice little continuity thing that they keep on working in with Bender's character, which is always nice to see, even though it's only an episode apart. But in any case, Leela takes the first bite of these shrimp and loves them, absolutely loves them. And Fry does as well. They both love them, and they decide to take them all home, or take a lot of them home, like a ship full, and they share them with the rest of the crew.
Let's take pockets full. No, let's take a whole Bender full. No. Stuff the ship.
Yeah.
Only what we need. Stuff the ship.
Stuff the ship. Yeah, exactly. So they have like thousands upon thousands of these prongs, and Hermes. This is actually kind of funny. So when they arrive, I wonder if it's just for the gag for this, because I don't know if you guys will notice, but Hermes is directing them. He has like headset. He's like right at this podium thing. He's like, "You are clear for landing." And then you hear like, "Okay," like she's eating, right? So I wonder if it was just for this gag, but you never see anybody or anything like that ever again in the show. It's only ever this one scene, as far as I can remember.
Yeah,
It's a very
I think maybe in one of the like when they did the movies, they always had like intros to like, hey, remember these characters, especially the first movie. I think there
okay.
might have been something like that,
I
but
don't recall
I
anybody ever
don't
directing the
recall
ship in.
perfectly.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So,
Oh, never mind. I think I'm mixing up with something else. Yep, my bad.
oh, okay. So anyway, we never see this again. But yeah, the whole crew starts eating this food, right? These shrimp type things, and they love them, and they're trying to figure out a name for it, and they come up with the term poplar, which
No,
apparently is the only one that's.
there,
Yeah,
there
go
was
ahead.
there was two that weren't copyrighted. Zitzlers or some of that. Like pretzels.
Zitzels or something. Yeah, zitzels
Zetzels
and
and
poplars.
poplars. Yeah.
And then
Which like
right,
there's only two things
yeah,
out of all the possible words in the world that aren't copyrighted.
not
A
copyrighted.
Z
Yeah,
word
exactly. Yeah.
and poplars, which I'm sure at some point would have been used.
Mhm.
And they're like, yeah, let's go with poplar. Ah, it's a great idea. Yeah, I'd certainly called it.
Yeah.
I actually love that gag, and it's sort of I'm sure we've all experienced, trying to find like a username on a service, then all the
Yeah.
common ones are taken.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
So it's
Well,
like the
we can
problem
never
that
be
will.
ourselves. I will say, and like, don't say my name out loud, but I will say, like, my full name. I am the only one of my full name in existence because I can have my full name as a URL or as a username, and it's never added with a number or anything. So I've been
Anthony
lucky.
LaShambles. Yep.
That's a big benefit.
It is a huge benefit. So have you guys, Mitchell? I feel like I think you. Well, actually, because you have a unique name, you have a unique spelling.
Yeah.
So maybe not.
It's not as unique as you think it is because like and
Yeah.
it's terrible too because I have one L in Mitchell, right? And
Right.
people being just like I just see an M and ends with an L, they just go, oh, it's got to be Michael because there's only one L. I've been
Right.
called Michael
Didn't really
multiple
think
times. I'm
about
like,
it, right.
this even happened last month with a dentist. He called me Michael. His name was Michael. He's like, oh, another Michael. I'm like, it's Mitchell. He's like, oh, so close. And then he screwed up my mouth.
Right. And yours is Tristan because your last name is also quite unique. But do you have to use numbers? Do you think? Okay.
Most services I've been able to get away with like either first name or last name or a combination of first name last name.
Right.
It's getting harder on more popular services. If the service is relatively new, like
Then
um,
you're usually
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Austrian people with my last name,
Oh.
and
But are there any
I've been getting
Tristans with that? Yeah. I mean, maybe.
yeah, I've
Maybe
been getting
T's,
someone's like invoice emails because they thought they had my they thought they were emailing someone else,
Oh, okay.
but it's someone and they're emailing me in Austrian, right? Yeah.
Interesting.
Are they not scams? Have you Google translated them at all?
I thought it was a scam at first, but I looked into it.
too
It's a real
frequent for
person
that. Yeah.
at a school
Strange.
somewhere in Austria.
Well, as we continue on then with the there's also another continuity thing later we'll find. I think this is in the third season, whatever one where they have to go to Pluto. But Zoidberg makes mention of like the food is better than like a nest of penguin eggs, or like better than like, unguarded penguin eggs, which he does make mention of eating penguin eggs later in the Pluto episode. So anyway, I wonder if that was like hinted at or something. But anyway, yes, they go with poplars, and Bender decides that he doesn't want to just give these things away. He wants to try and make some money with it, because he is who he is. So he and Fry set up a booth on the street. And
a little hover car that still has wheels on it. I love it. If you look at it, it literally hovers, but it has wheels on it.
Just to make it look like that. And there's also like the classics, like we see the hot dog stand guy there and all this kind of stuff. But they run into Joseph Gilman, or Joe Gilman, who happens to be the creator and the financier of Fishy Joe's, one of the aforementioned.
Some guy that ate at Fishy Joe's.
No, he says hell no, right? But yeah, he's the head guy there. So he offers them a business deal of, sell them, give them to me, let me distribute them, and then you can have some of the profits, right? Which is basically the same as their regular
profit.
one on the street, but gives them a reason to have them. And we go into this little montage of them going into business with them and doing all these kinds of things. So what do you guys think of this The
I
song.
love the
what do you think
song.
of the-
I love the song.
I
If
knew
you
you
promise
did,
not to
yeah.
sue us, you can shove one up your nose. I
Right.
love that.
And the music, it's like a nice little shanty because it's a,
Fishy
it's like
Joe's.
a fish place, right? How about you, Tristan? What do you think of this little montage of greed and trying to get all the food and all the shrimp
Yeah, it
or
worked. It
poplars,
was
I should
good.
say? Yeah.
I liked it.
Then we have Leela during this montage. At the end of the montage, there's also this little fun little gag she does that she flies through the billboard again, which they always do in the opening credits. So Fry makes mention of this, and it kind of breaks the fourth wall a bit. But he's like, "Hey, you've smashed through the second billboard this week," kind of thing. So first time we see this, and it turns out there are protesters. Some of the best lines of the episode come in this scene. We have the professor yelling at some protesters, and they are greeted by none other than Free Waterfall Jr., a how do they describe him? Like a vegetarian philanthropist and like animal lover or something.
Think of just 70s hippies, like long hair, just like
Yeah.
just a vest. That's it.
Yeah. Get off my property. You don't own property, man. It's like, yeah, I do. So
I can if I have a job.
So they're all there, they're talking or they're arguing about it, debating that poplars happen to be intelligent. I'm curious, how is it because the poplars are clearly like a living creature, which is, I guess, why they mistake them for shrimp in the first place.
So yeah, there's a few interesting. One little tidbit I noticed in the montage before where they were singing their shanty.
Mm-hmm.
In the box that they're transporting the poplars on top of the ship, it says live cargo or live poplars or something like that. So they know they're alive.
Okay, so they do know they're living. So they do know it's a meat product.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe they think it's some sort of crunchy, savory plant product, like
but they do say
nuts
live
of the earth or something.
Sure.
But they think it's at least alive. And the protesters, I think, they haven't discovered that they are sentient at this point. I think because of what's about to happen with Leela.
Right.
They're simply protesting because I guess they must think it's a meat product. At the very least.
The must be like, I guess it's because I guess one argument could be made is that they're selling it through Fishy Joe's, which is indeed a fish restaurant, a seafood restaurant, and then
Ride the walrus.
Right. And all those creatures must be, living at some point, right? Fish, crustaceans, crab, all that kind of stuff. So maybe they just kind of put two and two together. But in any case,
they could just be like a lot of protesters. We hate this thing because it's not the same as our ethics. Down with Fishy Joe's.
But it's still, it's like, we're going to boycott Fishy Joe's, but they don't even eat there anyway. So
exactly.
it's kind of a what would you call it, like an empty threat, right? Because it's like they weren't going to eat there anyway, so it's them saying that it's not really going to hurt any profits. But I think that's basically what it's supposed to be, is that these guys clearly know there's something to do with meat, if not like some kind of crustacean thing, and they're against it because it goes against eating a living creature, anything that feels pain. And then there's, of course, the joke, one of the best jokes of the episode with they say like animals eat other animals, it's way of nature. Waterfall Jr. says, "No, it's not. We taught a lion to eat tofu." And the lion is clearly like dying. So wonderful little gag there. I love it. And they have there's also like the joke of like we're I can't remember what the acronym is, but it's basically MEAT, which is just meat.
Man against
of the ethical and
treatment of animals.
And treatment of animal
like
treatment
that.
or something. Yeah, ethical animal treatment or something. So, any case, it turns out though, as Tristan here was alluding to, Leela's like, okay, well, there's one poplar left in this bucket, and maybe I'll just eat it. And it turns out to speak to her. It says, "Mama," and she freaks out because it turns out not only is it a living thing, but it's intelligent. So they all have this argument in the Planet Express crew, all arguing about, like, oh, we should probably stop feeding these things and giving these things to other people or selling them to other people because this is wrong to eat intelligent people, or intelligent things rather. And there's a joke about Fry eats parrots, apparently, because Parrots can speak and we eat them, right?
Like fry.
So anyway, another somewhat kind of a montage, little few scenes or whatever, when all of the Planet Express crew, or at least the trio, were trying to stop people from eating poplars.
My favorite one is with Bender. Like, he's like, don't stop eating the delicious 10-pack with all the awesome sauces. Don't have the sandwiches and all the good stuff.
Don't take advantage of the $12 deal or 12 dozen
exactly.
deal. He's like, yeah. Stop eating with honey garlic. And they're all like, oh, this sounds like this is pretty good. Like, he's so good at this.
if we want to dive into this too, is like, aren't they the suppliers? Like, they basically would just stop supplying the poplars, so like it would stop at some point. It's not as if Fishy Joe's knows where it is. He just pays them.
Well, I think but they've given so much, like it's backlogged, right? So they can still sell for a long period of time. Well, as we find out very quickly that they've eaten the whole planet, I guess, has eaten a ton of them, right?
1.8 billion, is that what it was?
Much more than that. Much more
billions,
than that,
not million. Billion.
Yeah, but there's more people than that, right? It was like 198 billion of them or
Maybe
something.
That was
there's not enough humans. But in any case, we go to one of my favorite scenes of this, and of course, what Mitchell's title card was based around is the date night with Linda for the news, and they have a debate about whether or not to eat.
Shut up.
Yeah. Whether or not to eat these things. And yeah, we have Joe Gilman, we have Free Waterfall Jr. and Leela.
Shut up.
And what do you guys think of this? Did you guys ever watch any of these types of debates online?
No, they were pointless back then, and they're pointless now. But like, the idea itself is like, hey guys, we're gonna have a topic, we're gonna discuss it. This is bad because these are the reasons A, B, C, and 3. And the other person was like, well, to rebut. But no, it usually just ends up being like a shut up, no, you shut up. But like with words.
I've watched hours and hours and hours of these debates. Not at the time, but
right. But now.
Christopher Hitchens was a big guest on a lot of these shows, talking about topics he cares about, which are topics I care about, and all of that's on YouTube. And I've watched, many hours of that. So I'm very familiar with the format.
Are they kind of like this with like the square boxes and like their screens or something, or are they in the same room and they're debating? Because I've seen those too.
There's both, stuff, right? There's very often he'll be doing stuff in the same room, but sometimes he would call in.
Oh, okay.
So video call in.
Of course, right. And then this is kind of what this is, right? It's a video call in with them being on the computer on the TV, and everybody's watching it and all this kind of stuff. So Gilman is on the side of like, it's food and it's making a profit. We're going to eat this. Leela's on the side of like, we can eat meat, but we should not be eating intelligent meat or intelligent things as meat. And Waterfall Jr. is on the complete side of don't eat anything that can feel feelings, essentially, or anything that can feel pain. But he's going about it in a very stupid way because no one's actually listening to him.
Everybody shut up and listen to me.
But we don't actually see anything until we find that the Poppler that spoke to Leela, who we actually do get to meet later in the future. I didn't actually realize this until now. This is Jur.
Yeah.
Who actually shows up way later in the future with like an actual
episodes.
Character and everything. Yeah, a few episodes. So it's actually quite cool to see this continuation from it. I really like that. And the debate basically ends when Gilman says like, who's going to stop me from eating and selling these things? And who are the parents of these poplars? Not only
Lur from Omicron Persei 8.
Yes.
And Nindinda.
And Nindinda. So of course, Maurice LaMarche and I think Tress MacNeille is Nindinda. So here they are. And this also, one of Mitchell's favorite lines from anything, or at least the one he mentioned a couple times beforehand, is the beginning of Doom. This is the beginning of this with Bender's like long term for it. And they have a demand that they are going to eat people in lieu of how many because it turns out the poplars are they're young, right?
Yeah,
so they're going to do all this
basically.
Tristan, do you think this is a fair trade for two completely separate species? If you found out that one species had been eating another species all along, even though they didn't know, do you think this would be a fair trade-off if they could do it? Is it like a fair kind of treatment?
It's an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, or in this case, makes the whole universe blind. I
Yeah.
suppose.
Or not exist. So you
Yeah.
say it wouldn't be a good tactic, right? Because it'd be
No.
the revenge thing never really works out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to ask Mitchell this. Eat
Feed
them all.
them until they're burnt to the ground.
Yeah, the Omicronians could honestly just take them all out anyway, right?
Oh,
They don't. Yeah.
When was that one where was this the first time we met the Omicrons when
Nope.
the TV went down, right?
That was the
TV
first
signals went
time.
down?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Because
Okay. Yeah.
the professor says, "Oh, they're back again." Yeah.
Yeah. They do have the immortality, so they can't die or something like that, right? The recipe for immortality. There was a whole thing that like we liked the ending for the female lawyer, but we didn't like it enough to give you
yeah,
the
we won't share.
recipe
We
for
won't share
immortality.
this. Yeah. No, you're right. So they have some technology that could easily either wipe us all out or make us all better, but they just leave us alone, kind of thing. But
The
this
technology
is like
of Omicrons don't make sense because they also have bikes that can fly with the power of love. So
they're a
it doesn't
fantasy
make
race
sense.
of some sort, right?
Yeah.
So,
So I
any
don't know.
case, here they are, and Zap Brannigan, Captain
Oh, I
Zap
love him
Brannigan,
in this episode.
is negotiating with the Omicronians as he's eating poplars in front of them. Fun little
These
thing
would be
there.
great with guacamole.
Guacamole, you idiot. So, however, the terms that they've come up with are not sufficient for the populace, even if they wanted to agree to this. There are not 198 billion people. So they come to a compromise, and it turns out they're going to eat only one human, this human being Leela, due to the fact that Leela was the first one to eat one of their young. Leela's pissed. Everybody else is cheering. Again, I send this to you, Tristan. And the reason I do this is because Tristan and I actually did philosophy back in the day. Not our majors, but we did it a little bit, and we had some fun discussing for hours what certain things were. What is your position on this? Is this a good compromise, do you think? Is to forcefully give someone?
Well, from from Zap's perspective, being able to negotiate down from
198
more like destroying the entire human race several times over down to a single person, that's objectively a success, right?
Well, he did offer to help make as many as he could, so
Yeah, that's right. Zap was willing to put in the effort to make the.
We'll have a set of men working around the clock. I know I'll put in my time.
Having said that, obviously Leela's pissed. She's the one who's been fighting the hardest to stop the consumption of their young.
Says, yeah.
She's pissed. She did start it, but she also that was an accident effectively, and she was the lead advocate for let's not eat poplars.
So maybe they should have eaten Fry as someone who was still eating poplars and was like the second person to do it. Would that have been a better choice?
They do attempt to eat him in a different episode, though, his lower horn, so to speak.
Of course, yeah. Well, we'll go. Oh, right. Yeah, we have to get to that episode.
The Omicrons always bring fun and mysticalness.
They are wonderful characters, and I'm so happy when they do show up. And they're not used too much. That's always
yeah. They're not overused. They're not underused either. They're used just the right amount of time.
Right amount of time, and I agree. So, any case, Leela's angry, as mentioned, and she's brought into this. She's put into a cage, and they're going to do this giant. I love it.
It's like a circus cage.
Yeah, they're going to do this giant live broadcast of Leela being eaten by the Omicronians, and Linda's there hosting it, and it's brought to you by Fishy Joe's
Ride the Walrus.
Ride the Walrus, of course.
That's such quintessential late stage capitalism. There's going to be horror that will go down in the history books, but don't forget your advertising.
Exactly. It's very Orwellian in some ways, isn't it? Very much this like don't forget about this. And yes, Ride the Wall. I love that whole thing. Like, yeah, like freshly squeezed walrus. And it's like a little boy, like a boy with a hat, like a teenager, and he's like hanging out with a walrus. Like, it's so absurd. As you mentioned, it's absurdism is up to the 10th notch in this episode, which is wonderful. So they get there, and Leela and Bender Bender and Fry are trying to console Leela. She's not having it. And Zap shows up again. And he's going to try and save her. So he's actually trying his utmost to try and even help Leela, despite the fact that this is, I guess, his compromise. Although, to be fair, he didn't know that the human they were going to choose was going to be Leela, right? So that's fair. But they bring a orangutan, and the orangutan obviously to us looks nothing like Leela, but
it scratches its butt, and just like Leela, oh my God, I'm seeing double.
And Kip happens to be an expert stylist, so he makes like a nice long purple ponytail, put an eye patch over one of the orangutan's eyes, and then, they probably won't be able to tell the difference because they have issues telling the difference between them. But yes, very funny there. So Zap goes out, pushes this orangutan in this circus cage, as you mentioned, Mitchell, and Lur and Ninda are sitting at this beautiful table. There's also the joke with like the waiter who asks too many questions. I thought of Mitchell. I don't know about you, Tristan, but like you and I know Mitchell pretty well. Do you know like when Mitchell gets asked all these questions and he freaks out at a restaurant?
No. It was always just like whenever I ordered like we'll say like I'll go to just like a pub or something. I order a burger. Oh, what would you like for your side? What are the sides? Like fries,
this.
salad, salad. Yeah, what type of salad? I want this. What type of sauce do you want with your salad? Yeah. I want this vinaigrette or normal or creamy. Right. I don't know now. I can do 2 choices, but 4? No.
Right. And so I was just freaking out, but then he just blasts the waiter, and that's all right. So, clearly Lur doesn't like it either. So they bring out the orangutan, and I love this little joke. Like if you listen to them, the crowd starts like
murmuring,
talking, like, oh, what's going on? This is really strange. What's? And then Zap's like, right,
people
like,
of Earth.
Yeah.
Shush.
And then they're like, oh, I see. Yeah, I see what he's doing. Yeah, okay. Everybody quiet. Like they all like agree amongst themselves not to say anything, which you would never have in real life. I'm sorry. Like people would just be like totally trolling everything. They'd be like, it's an orangutan. But the one troll that does show up, who is, part of this, Free Waterfall Jr. runs out and yells the truth. And of course, he's right. It is an orangutan. Lur pulls out some spectacles. He looks at it. He's like, it is a monkey. So clearly that's all it was. It's just he doesn't have pretty good vision. None of them do. And Waterfall saves the orangutan until the Ninda eats it.
Yes, indeed, it was an orangutan.
So anyway, they bring out the real Leela. She's about to be eaten, and who should come to her defense though is Jur. He's able to run now. He's a tiny little creature, but he's still able to. He jumps into her mouth as she's in Lur's mouth. And Jur does this speech about like, are we no better than them about doing this and this? Like, why should we eat these people? Like basically the arguments that I think a lot of us would have in this situation. The Omicronians agree based off what Jur has said. They remove Leela. They agree not to eat anybody. And then Waterfall kind of, I don't know how to describe this, kind of just pisses off or annoys everybody because he's trying to do like this all hippie thing, like, okay, let's hold hands, let's do this. Yeah, kumbaya, everyone. And so Lur eats him instead, thus fulfilling the compromise. So they're all on even square now. But he's filled with drugs. So Lur starts becoming a little high. Wonderful scene as well.
Whoa, my hands could touch anything but themselves.
And, wait. Right. And then, they take off. And the Planet Express crew finishes off with a strong joke of all of them like having a nice celebratory dinner for not having to eat Leela. And it's all a bunch of different meat, including dolphin. But this dolphin was dumb enough, what was it, to gamble or something, or buy lottery tickets. So killing and eating him.
There's a specific type of it was like scratchers or something.
Scratch and win tickets. He blew all his money on scratch and win tickets. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. We'll eat the dolphin. And that is the problem with Popplers. So let's discuss it here. So Tristan, your overall thoughts of this episode and everything from it. What do you think?
So when you proposed that I could, partake in one of these episodes, and you gave me the episodes that you had remaining in the season, it was very obvious to me that I had to pick this episode.
Right. And I've remained quiet as to why you may have had an affinity to this. But if you wish to tell people, you can.
Yeah. Well, and it's not a clean affinity because when this episode came out, I probably didn't see it right when it came out. I think it was 2000 or 2001. I probably didn't see it until 2 or 3 years after that. So I'm a young teenager. I'm grappling with some issues of like, similar topics to what this episode addresses. Like, is it okay to eat animals? Is it okay to eat animals that are self-aware?
Right.
And I can't say this episode like changed my life because it was several years after I saw this episode, but it certainly contributed to the thought process. Probably made young Tristan a little bit uncomfortable with what he was doing. So yeah, this episode did have some effect on my life,
which is
I can say
interesting.
that.
Yeah. So even though, what you're getting at is like the vegetarianism side of things, right? So someone who doesn't eat meat, for those who might not know. But what exactly is it then that would you say, like, do you think that the vegetarian side of this is also equally distributed in this episode, or do they kind of make fun of it too much?
I think it was a really good balance. They didn't get too sanctimonious about it. They played with our sympathies primarily through the perspective of Leela and her not being a vegetarian and her continuing to argue not in favor of vegetarianism. When she's on the news show, she says, I don't think anyone's here to, say that we shouldn't eat meat. I am. But
yeah, right.
But she says, these animals in particular are self-aware. They are talking to us if you let them, get old enough.
Right.
And yeah, so
well, I guess in like the universe of like Futurama as well, it kind of has this weird little connotation. So if a man like Joe Gilman, right, who is perfectly open with eating anything that will make a profit, right, or selling anything that will make a profit, including, like he says, even as a joke maybe, but he says we don't eat human because they taste like crap. We don't eat people. Then does that mean that they would be okay to eating like aliens that they've come into contact with, who could also be, with like sentient and all this kind of stuff because they've come to the planet? But there's also jokes in the past they've made, like Hermes has made multiple jokes about eating Zoidberg, right? They do these kinds of things. So like in a universe like Futurama, in the far future, is the idea of vegetarianism, does it seem kind of strange, or is it like, well, obviously we don't eat sentient creatures, but that's clearly not the case. There's clearly arguments to be made to eat sentient creatures.
Well, at least in the case of Fishy Joe, he seems to be perfectly okay with the concept of eating, like if you were to present him Kith, he would be like, I'm happy to eat him,
Right. If they taste delicious, I don't see a problem with this, right? That's the profit.
They also
I don't think that's necessarily true of all of the characters. It just seems to be that he's the most ruthlessly capitalistic, like I will do anything for a buck.
That's true.
Yeah. They also make a joke way back in the on the garbage episode that they recycle food too. Like that sandwich you're eating, Fry, is a recycled sandwich.
That's right.
So,
yeah, it's very strange. So some people could be very much open to the idea. Maybe it's not so much an argument about vegetarianism versus like good or bad to eat meat, whether or not it's good to eat people to make a profit, or good to eat living things to make a profit, I think is more the argument here, which is what I think that Leela and Joe are kind of opposite sides for, especially for this one. Waterfall is clearly on the side of don't eat anything that can feel. And also this is a kind of a fun thing. So Free Waterfall Jr. is one in a line of many of the waterfalls that we'll come to see throughout the series, and they all somehow meet an untimely demise in the most ironic way. Like he got eaten by Lur, and then one of the one we mentioned with the penguins, actually, which Zoidberg has this. I believe that the other waterfall is in that one, and he has an ironic demise as well. So yeah,
there's 5 waterfalls that I can remember, and they all die. Yeah.
They're all dead. Yeah, it's like the running joke of it, right? But in any case, how about you there, Mitchell? Your thoughts on the episode and anything like this?
Oh, I love it. I think this one's might be one of my favorite of this season, definitely. But it's definitely a favorite one of mine. Favorite joke is probably when he eats the hippie. I like that one. But there's also another one too when Fry and Bender are talking to Leela when she's gonna die, and Bender compares like, "You're a good and awesome friend, just like titanium." And then when Leela gets like all like rude to them, he's like, "Someone's acting awfully aluminum."
Aluminum, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what I was thinking. So back at the beginning, we're talking about molten boron. I thought maybe this was like a small weird joke to it because it's like they keep
No,
on
it's his own
mentioning all
thing.
these random metals. But yeah, maybe I'm grasping at straws because it's such a strange thing to throw in there. But yeah, titanium and aluminum. And how about you, Tristan? Did you have a favorite scene of the episode?
I'll just mention in passing one of my favorite jokes because it wasn't brought up.
Yeah.
Just what's the little one's name? Jur.
Jur.
Otherwise,
Jur.
yeah.
Jur. When Jur is talking about, or Leela's talking to Jur, saying, "I hope you'll always think of me as your mom," and they're like, "When my species grow up, we eat our moms." And she goes like, "Whoop!" and throws him back to the other mom, his actual mom.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yep.
Doesn't specify when though, so because.
It just when we grow up, right? So
I'm saying we see him later on, and he's not grown up, but he's definitely like a child still. So
he's definitely a child, so he's definitely not grown up. Let's see. I think my favorite scene of this is probably. I mean, I do love the lion with tofu. I think that is pretty just hilarious.
It's pretty classic.
It's hard to choose from. That's why I said that hippie one or that one.
Yeah. The doomed thing sets up everything quite nicely. I do like the just comparing Leela to an orangutan, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, like perfect, yeah." Okay, and then of course, yeah, you guys have your MVPs for this episode? We'll go through here. Mitchell, why don't you go first? Do you have an MVP for here?
No, I can't think of one off right now. There's a lot here. It's either Leela or it might even be Lur. I'm not sure yet.
Well, go ahead. Well, okay, I'll come back to you then. How about you, Tristan? Your MVP for this episode?
I think it's got to be Leela. She spearheaded like the entire plot from like inception to resolution. The only thing I can think of is like the obvious comparison seems to be with Lisa Simpson when Lisa, goes vegetarian.
Yeah.
And the fact
they do have the most in common, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. They're both like, intelligent, strong women characters. The fact that in contrast to Lisa, Leela doesn't go vegetarian and doesn't make a character change, and I actually don't know the timeline between Lisa goes vegetarian. I think it must have been a few years earlier.
I think that was definitely like late 90s.
That was in the 90s, yeah, because it had that was with McCartney, right? So I think that was definitely in the 90s, I think. Yeah, it was like season 6 or something, or 6 or 7.
It probably would have felt too derivative if they did essentially the same character arc with Leela as Lisa.
Sure. Well, I also think that and I agree with you. Leela is I would actually argue she's one of the best female characters probably ever written for a TV series. I would say, animation or otherwise. But what Leela differs when it comes to like character as Lisa, because Lisa is also just a child, right? So there's a lot of stuff they can't really touch on, whereas Leela's like fully grown and you have her whole life to kind of fall back on. But Leela went through like a lot of hardships in her life, and she's always had this like ability. She's always had this desire to try and prove herself. And it's something that's always comes up in these things. So even in this episode, she has this huge like amount of anger and like not despite rather she like you were eating them
resentment.
Like, after I said this resentment. Thank you. You ate them and you were stepping on them for fun, right? So she has this like complete anger towards these characters.
Yeah, and completely justified.
Right. She has like this, and she's like I'm so much better than this. She has like this amount of pride. And this is something that she has to work towards. Whereas I think Lisa's pride is more about the fact that she's like thinks she's better than a lot of people because she's smart. But of course, that's like an 8-year-old one. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, no, I agree. Leela is up there as well. Actually, for my MVP, I definitely go Lur. Lur is hilarious in this episode, and he does a lot of great lines. And even though he's only in the last third of the show. And sorry, also speaking of Leela, I forgot to mention this. Is it the first time, Mitchell, or the second time that we hear her full name?
I think we heard it beforehand because like we kind of knew that. So when the joke was, oh, Turunga,
Right.
that's her name, Philip. Philip.
You're right.
I'm pretty sure we knew that beforehand, but I can't remember
right?
where. But I'm
But
pretty
it's
sure
not her. But it's not her first name, which I always found this confusing when I was a kid. I thought her first name was Turunga because everybody calls them Fry and Leela, right? But Philip is his first name. She still calls him that, even years in the future, even when they're together. She still calls him still calls him Fry, and that's clearly his last name. Turunga is her family name because her parents are Turunga Munda, Turunga Morris. She's Turunga Leela. So this is it's like the Asian way of doing it, right? You put the last name of the family name first, then the final name or their first name. So it's an interesting little thing. But yeah, we see this Turunga Leela thing. There's a little bit of a joke. Anyway, Mitchell, your thoughts on your MVP?
We'll go with Lur.
You're gonna go Lur? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So between the Lur, the Leela, you went with the Lur, hey? All L's today. Wonderful.
La.
Well, thank you so much, you guys, for joining me today, and thank you again, Tristan, for joining us for this as a guest star. It's nice to hear a different perspective on these episodes.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I hope that we can have you on again very soon, maybe in the next couple of episodes for the finale. I was thinking of having some more guest stars, so if you're willing to join. And as always, thank you. Oh, for sure, thank you. And Mitchell, thank you again for joining me. And we'll see you all next time for Mother's Day.